and I have to thank my partner, who taught me that sometimes you have to cut away the dead weight to truly fly. The words echoed through the grand ballroom, amplified and sterile. On stage, bathed in a piercing white spotlight that caught the dust motes dancing in the air, Xander held the Innovator of the Year trophy. His smile was a high-gloss, predatory thing. 3,000 people in the tech industry were applauding him, applauding us, or so they thought. At my table near the front, I just watched his face on the massive screens flanking the stage. "Enjoy the moment, Xander," I said to no one. "We met at a startup incubator 7 years ago. He was the magnetic pitchman with a perfect handshake. I was the quiet coder who saw systems in everything. We were supposed to be a perfect partnership. I remember the night we landed our first big client, celebrating with cheap takeout on the bare concrete floor of our shoebox office. He sketched out our future on a whiteboard, a sprawling empire built on my code and his charisma. That was the good memory. The first red flag came a month later when he forgot to CC me on an email finalizing our seed funding, giving him a private line to our money guys. He said it was an accident, a simple oversight in the rush of success. I chose to believe him. Trust felt more efficient than suspicion. The first 3 years were our golden period. Our productivity app, Weave, took off. We got a Series A round, a feature in TechCrunch, and moved into a sprawling loft office with exposed brick and a kombucha tap. We celebrated milestones with late nights fueled by Thai food, the air thick with the smell of possibility and dry erase markers. He handled the clients and investors. I managed the product and the dev team. It was a clean division of labor, or so I thought. The cracks started as hairline fractures. Xander began taking solo investor dinners at places like Per Se, with expenses that made my eyes water. When I'd ask how they went, he'd be vague. "He's building the brand," I told myself. He started referring to Weave as his vision in interviews. "He's the face of the company," I rationalized. I was the one giving, pulling 70-hour weeks to patch bugs and roll out new features. He was the one taking, his calendar a mosaic of long lunches and networking trips. The discovery came not with a bang, but with a quiet electronic chime. It was a Saturday night, and I was logged into our corporate banking portal to approve payroll. An automated alert popped up. A wire transfer for $25,000 had just been sent to a payee I didn't recognize. Nightingale Innovations, LLC. The memo line was just 2 words, Project Nightingale. My heart went cold. I spent the rest of the weekend in a rabbit hole of public records and domain registries. Nightingale Innovations was a Delaware C-Corp, registered 6 months prior. The sole director listed was Xander. For weeks I said nothing. I hired a forensic accountant, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Zelda Vance. Working after hours, we unearthed a slow, methodical bleed. Over a year, Xander had siphoned exactly $158,400 from our accounts, funneling it into his new venture. It was building a competing platform using our proprietary architecture. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday morning. Xander called a surprise all-hands meeting with our key investors. In the sterile glass boardroom, with our lead investor Marcus watching, Xander presented a slideshow. It was a masterwork of fiction, filled with doctored performance reviews and falsified data painting me as a negligent, incompetent coder holding the company back. "I carried you for years," he said, his voice ringing with false sincerity. "Your code is a mess and your vision is small. We are succeeding in spite of you, not because of you. The board has agreed. It's time for you to go." The world went silent. In that freeze-frame moment, as Marcus looked at me with pity, my plan began to form. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about order, about balancing the books. And I noticed one tiny, vicious detail on his slide about future ventures. The logo for Nightingale Innovations featured a small, elegant bird. My grandmother's name was Florence. He'd heard me tell the story of her a dozen times. He had taken a piece of my personal history and used it to brand his betrayal. I knew lawyer Veronica Shaw was everything our old one wasn't, precise, lethal, and fiercely loyal to the facts. Her retainer was $25,000, a bitter irony I used to fuel my focus. For the next 3 months, Veronica and Zelda became my war room. We worked out of a rented office suite, walls covered in timelines and transaction maps. The cost was immense, not just in money, but in sleepless nights spent meticulously documenting every stolen dollar, every deceitful email. One evening, Xander nearly caught us. He came back to the office unexpectedly, and I had to shove a mountain of incriminating bank statements under a pile of old server manuals just as he walked in, his shadow falling across my desk. He asked what I was still doing there. "Just tidying up loose ends," I said. The evidence we gathered was irrefutable. We had the 7 wire transfers to Nightingale Innovations. We had the LLC registration papers bearing his digital signature. We had keylogged emails between Xander and his new team in which he explicitly discussed porting Weave's back-end code. We had server logs showing a complete download of our codebase to an external hard drive, timestamped at 3:14 a.m. on a Sunday. He had 42 text messages he'd sent to a friend, bragging about how he was fleecing the quiet coder. The ironic coincidence was the clincher. The registered address for Nightingale Innovations was the same building as per se. He hadn't been whining and dining investors. He'd been building his new team on my dime. Veronica's strategy was simple. We'd let him have his moment. Let him win the Innovator of the Year award he had so brazenly lobbied for. The higher the pedestal, she said, the more spectacular the fall, which brought us back to the gala. After he delivered his line about dead weight, I stood up. The room was dark except for the stage, but a few heads turned. My voice didn't need to be loud. The microphone on the lectern at my table was live for the Q&A portion later. Xander, before you accept that, there seems to be a discrepancy in the numbers. He laughed, a booming, dismissive sound. Not the time for spreadsheets, pal. Go sit down. But I was already walking toward the stage, my tablet in hand. The event's tech director, a man I'd spoken with earlier, met my gaze and nodded. Just one number, I said. $158,400. Xander's bravado began to curdle into confusion. On the massive screen behind him, his smiling face was replaced by a slide I'd prepared. It showed a side-by-side comparison. Weave's bank statement with a wire transfer out and Nightingale Innovations statement with the exact same amount deposited on the same day. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. His smile vanished. Then came the second wave. The next slide showed the LLC registration with his name. The next, a screenshot of his text message. He's so buried in code he'll never see it coming. The quiet ones are always the easiest to rob. And for the killer proof, the final slide. The server log of the IP theft, next to a photo of him holding the external hard drive, taken from the office security camera he'd forgotten I had access to. A man in a simple gray suit, a professional process server, was suddenly on stage. He placed a thick legal envelope in Xander's hand. Xander stared at it, his face a mask of panic. He looked from the papers to me, his mouth opening and closing with no sound. You were right about one thing, I said, my voice clear and calm. You cut away the dead weight. And I turned and walked off the stage. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My phone vibrated with a continuous stream of calls and texts for the next 24 hours. The headline on TechCrunch the next morning was Weave CEO served for fraud mid-acceptance speech. I ignored all of it. In the end, Xander didn't fight. He couldn't. He settled, signing over his half of the company and paying back every cent, plus damages and my legal fees. The investors Marcus included backed me unequivocally. The award was publicly rescinded. 6 months later, I saw a picture of him on LinkedIn. He was a junior sales associate at a struggling hardware company in another state. In the photo, his suit was slightly too big in the shoulders and the charismatic shine in his eyes was gone. He looked tired. He looked small. I felt nothing. I rebranded the company. Weave became Florence Systems, a quiet tribute to my grandmother. I'm the CEO now, not just the coder. My new office is smaller, cleaner, overlooking the city from the 34th floor. It's peaceful. Last week, a new venture capitalist was in my office, finalizing a new round of funding. She asked what happened to my original co-founder. I paused for a moment, looking out at the endless sky. Sometimes, I said, you have to cut away the dead weight to truly fly. And for the first time, the silence in my office felt like peace, not absence.